What's up, everybody? Just start off with, I didn't want to say it up there on the big stage, but had a great summer. Everybody's been really, really good. Expect everybody to be with us. A couple guys that didn't go in the spring, updates. Kanena Odalaga has been with us, should be full go rodeo. Some of these guys might limit a little bit just on rep count because they're just coming back, but Kanena should be good to go. James Crew's kind of a little bit ahead of schedule, so he's not cleared 100% yet, but he should be involved with us in practice the first day and hopefully be cleared after about 2 weeks into it. Unfortunately, last Wednesday, just during a normal routine drill, Mason Moragan came out of the drill and kind of stepped awkwardly and had a knee injury, so he actually had an ACL tear that unfortunately will need surgery, so he'll be out for the year. But other than that, we should be pretty much full throttle as we go forward and kind of see what this group's at starting on Sunday and our first practice on Monday. So other than that, we'll proceed with questions.
Brett, you obviously this program's been really competitive.
What's that?
This program's been really competitive with you. What's the next step, and what gives you confidence in what you see every day that you're ready for that?
Great question. Obviously, I didn't come here to compete, right? I want to win, and I think about it a lot. Our first year to go to 5 wins, and everybody was like excited. I'm like, well, we're gonna go to a bowl, right? And then next year to go 8-5, and I think a lot about what it could have been possibly, and then going into last year with a lot of expectations and thoughts, but to fall short and go 5-7. But on the flip side, I look at it and I say, over a 3-year window, if we could have found one more game in those 2 years, be 3 years in a bowl game, we'd be talking in a totally different light. So bottom line, it's about wins. I am excited. Obviously, this program grew in a big way through recruiting when I first got here, but I think this last year has been stronger than ever. I think the addition of some of these portal guys, not just the skill set they bring, but as I mentioned up there, you start looking at the number of games that some of these guys have started. Zacharias started over 40 games. T. Brooks to be at a almost 20-game starter at a program the level of Texas. J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley, our 2 tackles, both those guys have started in college football and played at a high level. Torrey Cox, a guy that started over 20 games, right? So not only the experience we have coming from our returning team, but the experience of that room, I think, can help us do those things.
Coach, after a 2-4 start last year, it seemed like in the second half, picked up some momentum, big road wins, offense is really clicking. What's the key to bottling up that momentum and getting off to a quick start this year?
Well, I understand the question, but for us, we just live every game for what it is, right? And we open up a game against Eastern Illinois on a Thursday night, and that's a very good football team that's going to come in with 1-10 to try and beat us, right? So it's going to start in week 1, and it'll go through 12 games that we got to take every game for what it is. I think as you progress as a program, you should play your best football at the end of the year, right? So hopefully we're going to play at a level in game 1 to take advantage of that moment. But 12 games later, hopefully we're going to be playing our best football and have a couple wins.
What are some of those areas where you felt like you needed to improve, and how do you think you addressed those in the offseason?
You're talking from last year?
From last year.
Yeah, without a doubt, I think offensively it starts up front, right? Always has. One of my biggest concerns was depth going into last year, and then we unfortunately had some issues in that area, right? So I think overall our depth in the offensive line, not just our 5 guys that'll start, I just think we have 10 guys there that I feel a lot better at than any time in my program history than I've been here, right? The 10 guys that I would figure into being in our 2 deep, I feel really good about them. Have some battles in fall camp that'll be fun to watch. I do like, obviously Tip Ryman probably left a year earlier. If you were standing here a year ago, I would have thought he would have been back, but he just played so well and obviously got drafted in the 3rd round. But I do think that the players we've acquired in that room have been very impressive for us last spring. Cole Rusk, obviously, being where it is, but Tanner Arkin, who's been in our program now for 2 years. You forget that some of these guys have been with us a while. It's not like they just transferred in, right? So those 2 guys in particular, Henry Boyer back, full strength. I'm really excited to see. And then Goda is a guy that we just added and very athletic, a good ball catcher receiver. I think in the receiver room, Pat Bryant's growth as a football player has just been really pretty special since last year, taking that leadership role and seeing where it's going. Anytime you have a quarterback that started 10 games in college football, it's a good thing. I think Donovan Leary had as good a spring and is playing as good a football since I've been around him. He's 3rd year in our program, so to have multiple quarterbacks that have been in our program for a while, I've never been able to say that. Defensively, I think the return of Xavier Scott, Matt Bailey off of injuries and the way they've looked has been pretty impressive. Some of the portal additions that I already mentioned. Up front, very excited. I think Dennis Briggs is a guy that will jump out to a lot of people when you see him play. T. Rao was a transfer for us 2 years ago out of Northwestern, who's literally turned into one of our best defensive leaders. Really impressed with him. Alex Bray had a great great spring, and a couple other newcomers up front. And I think our edge players, obviously with Seth and Gabe here, those might be the best group of outside linebackers. You throw Alec Bryant and D. Brown in there, and I'm really excited about those 4 guys. And inside, Kanana and Dylan have had a really, really impressive spring. And then you got Krutzy coming into that mix as well.
Ray, you went up there and told everybody, "I love my job."
Yeah.
Why did you want to say that? Has your job gotten harder, crazier, more stressful?
No, I just, I hear narratives out there, right? Like everybody, like even like people that I'm around as a family or socially or friends, right? They're like, man, I don't envy your job. And I'm like I've never had anybody say that before. Like most people would love to be in my job, right? And that's never been stronger for me than it is right now. Like I just, my wife and I ducked out of town for a couple of weeks in Hawaii, and you're in a 5-hour different time zone, so not a lot of people are bothering you except for the people coming up to you at the pool, right? And it was funny just what general people who don't know me, who recognize me, would come over and say, right? And I'm like, this is one of the greatest times in college football to be in the position I'm in, right? Like just, in the past, maybe if you were thin at different positions, you just kind of had to absorb what you had to absorb, and now you can go out in a portal world and get a player that you feel can come in and help you win, right? And that's never been done before. Players, everybody wants to talk about NIL. What I love about NIL, I watched a guy, Isaiah Adams, who's from Canada last year, who literally, when the opportunity for him to have NIL money came, and for him to be able to fly his mom and his sister in for games that have never seen him play college football, to me, that's what NIL is all about, right? Like being able to give not only the players but their families opportunities that have never been given before. So, don't get me wrong, there's things that got to be worked out and can get better. One of the byproducts of an NIL world is everybody wants to have a dog. Right? Like I got 2 dogs that weigh 4 pounds each, and they're a pain in the ass, right? Like, and I can't imagine some of the dogs that some of these guys have that, now they got to have somebody sit them when they're out of town, right? Or dogs do things when they're not there, right? So there's all kinds of unintended consequences, and believe me, dogs are the last of least amount of the issue, but those are just little things that have come about because of the NIL world.
What you see compared Henry this offseason? What kind of growth points do you want to have?
Yeah. Well, he and I had some real conversations, right? And then I think even going back into last spring, I could just tell a difference in his demeanor. Listen, I got better every year as a coordinator too, right? I had 2 years as a co-coordinator before I became the coordinator. So I think one of the things that really helped me was that in-job training. I worked with Bob Elliott, who rest in peace, is like one of the biggest influences in my life. But I learned firsthand how a game plan was developed, implemented. I was a part of it, right? But he called it, right? And then my first year as a coordinator at Wisconsin, we took a team that was, not so good and turned into something special, I think, because of the effect of those 2 years in training. So I know Aaron was going to get better naturally, but to see a growth and then, surrounded with some really good coaches. But then when we started game planning, like we did game plan opponents on all of our new opponents, and he just was much more advanced than he had been in the past, right? So I think putting it all together, understanding it, and the logistics of his job, he's got a better feel for.
The schedule doesn't get easier from here on out. How are you guys embracing the challenge of bringing in 4 quality programs? And that's going to be a lot of traveling too. How are you embracing that challenge?
Well, we just got to take on one this year. We play at Oregon. But again, I go back to, I remember I was in this league when Penn State got at it, right? And we went out there and played there. And then I was at Wisconsin when we brought Nebraska in the league, and we got to introduce them to college football in the Big Ten, right? So to bring in teams from the outside is one of the greatest things you can do, right? It brings new rivalries, brings new fans, and for us, and I mean this wholeheartedly, to recruit and be able to tell a kid you're going to play on the East Coast, the West Coast, and everywhere in between. There's no other conference that can say that, and I think that's a really positive thing.
You've had premier running back rooms in the past. How excited are you about this group?
I'm excited. I would say I don't think we have a 1A. I think we got a 1A, B, C, and D, right? Super excited. Josh McCray looks as good as he's ever looked. Really impressed with where he's at. Caden Fagan just continues to do things that we just have never seen before. Our strength coaches tell me numbers that he puts up that are just mind-boggling for his size frame. Aiden Lawfrey, I would tell you, if you polled our coaches, would say that he's probably the most improved player in our program from a year ago at this time to where he is now. Had limits of that last year. You saw glimpses, but what we've seen every day in spring and fall. And then Jordan Anderson, unfortunately, has had a little tweak of a hamstring, so he's had some soft tissue, but he'll be with us in fall camp. And then I tell you, Khalil Valentine is a very impressive young man in his first month or two in the program. So super excited about that room, see where they can go.